Welcome to today's webinar, Thinking Inside the Box, to Better Scientific Posters. This webinar series is coordinated by the Aging Initiative, which is an R24-funded initiative that bridges the expertise and leadership of two powerhouses for research on multiple chronic conditions. The two powerhouses are the Healthcare Systems Research Network, formerly called the HMO Research Network, and the NIH-funded Claude D. Older American Independent Centers, or PEPPER Centers. The initiative is led by Dr. Jerry Gurwitz at University of Massachusetts and Myers Primary Care Institute, along with co-PIs Elizabeth Bayless and Jay Magaziner. Heather Whitson. I'm a faculty in the Duke University Pepper Center, and I co-lead the Aging Initiative's Dissemination Workgroup, along with Leah Hanson at HealthPartners. So before we get started, I need to cover first just a few technical details. Welcome to those who are just logging on. So due to the number of registrants for today's webinar, we have placed the phone lines on mute to reduce the audio feedback. So unless you are logged on as a host or a panelist, your line will be muted. We do welcome and encourage audience participation using the Q&A and the chat features on this webinar software. So if you're in your Cisco webinar portal, you should be looking under the tab that says Presentation or Webinar. And on the upper right, you'll see icons for chat and another icon for Q&A. If you have questions for our speaker, please use the Q&A function to submit those questions. And I will be keeping an eye out for those questions under the Q&A icon. And then permits, we'll read the questions for our speaker after the presentation. Technical or logistical questions, we ask that you submit those using the chat function. Chat function, you can choose whether you would like your comment to be visible to all participants, or you can send the question only to the hosts. And I'll extend a huge thanks to Catherine Anzuni and Joanne Wagner, functioning in the host role. They and their team do an amazing job with behind-the-scenes work to make these webinars possible, and they will be monitoring the chat function today and helping with technical troubleshooting. I'll now introduce today's speaker. Throughout life, John Bielenson has been inspired by the power of the printed and, more recently, the electronic word. John, grandson of the founders of Peter Popper Press, which is a small printing and publishing company in Westchester County, New York. He typeset by hand in elementary school and wrote sports for the local paper while still in high school. He served as an editor at the Crimson at Harvard, completed the intensive Radcliffe Publishing Procedures course, and poised to serve as the third generation of Bielensons to run the family business. Instead, a friend recommended him for a public affairs job in New York City government. In the next 30 years, he went on to work with a wide range of government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and foundations, and helped those groups use communications for social good. He earned Masters in Communication Studies from UNC Chapel Hill and founded the North Carolina Media Institute, which trained grassroots environmental activists in advocacy and communication skills. Today, Bielenson is president of Strategic Communications and Planning, or SCP, a full-service, socially responsible consulting firm in Wayne, Pennsylvania, with specialties on both of the age spectrum, children and older adults. In the field, SCP's clients include or have included the John A. Hartford Foundation, National Council on Aging, Grant Makers in Aging, the AARP Foundation, the American Foundation for Aging Research, and the Gerontological Society of America, among others. In a volunteer capacity, Bielenson is a former chair and current board member of Surrey Services for Seniors, a local nonprofit that serves more than 3,500 older adults in southeastern Pennsylvania. One of his passions has been scientific posters. He's given workshops on improving poster performance to hundreds of graduate students and faculty, intent on learning how to communicate their science more effectively. He's the founder of PosterBuzz at posterbuzz.com, a website dedicated to this topic. I am very delighted that my friend and colleague has volunteered his time to speak to the Aging Initiative group today. And so without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to John Bielenson. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try to, I've shared my screen, and again, hopefully the technology will be kind to us. Thank you for that warm introduction, and indeed, Heather and the Aging Initiative, I'm very pleased to talk to you today about something that is really, indeed, I am sort of passionate about, and that is about is scientific posters and use scientific posters to improve a variety of skills and abilities to communicate science effectively. For those of you who don't know me, there's a picture, and it gives you a little sense of who I am. And Strategic Communications and Planning, SCP, is a small, we like to say, mighty communications and public relations firm with a specialty in aging, and we worked as described with a variety of nonprofit organizations and foundations in the aging field. Today, though, I am here to talk to you about posters. Yes. So, why am I here? Posters, right? No. Actually, I'm not really here about posters, because the reason I'm interested in posters is that the work of thinking about and developing a scientific poster requires a set of communications and organizational skills that I believe are critical to providing important leadership and indeed professional development for those of you earlier in your careers, that will enable you to address a wide variety of communications and leadership challenges, whether that is developing improving your teaching, whether it's improving or enhancing a podium presentation, whether it's working with the community to get your information about your research out more broadly, whether it's working indeed with health leaders to improve practice or policy change. So again, we will talk about posters today, and again, I'm not, it's not a complete bait and switch, but again, the reason I'm here is, again, only partially to talk about posters. It's really to encourage you to think about communications in a strategic way and to apply that approach to a lot of challenges, many of the challenges that you face as professionals in the aging field. So about posters, right? Leadership, yes, we're about posters. Actually, no, we're not about posters. The other thing I want to say is that a lot of what people think about when they think about posters is actually what goes up on the poster board behind you, what you're probably working on your screen in the next couple of weeks as you get ready for AGS or any number of the spring meetings. Indeed, we're not going to really talk, we are going to talk about what actually goes up on the screen. Again, not a complete bait and switch, but we are really focused on the poster session and talk a little bit further about that, because in terms of being successful at posters or in creating more effective posters, you'll need to think about not just what goes up on the wall, but indeed a set of interactions that you have during the course of the hour and a half, maybe 2 hours that the poster session, your next poster session, will entail. So again, this talk today even though I keep saying it's not about posters, we will have some about posters and poster design, all of that good stuff. But those are kind of some framing thoughts that it's really about something bigger around communications and leadership, and that you should think about posters in the context of a poster session and a successful poster session. To do over the next, let's see, we've got about an hour and maybe 15 or 20 minutes, is to kind of review 4 steps to effective poster sessions. That'll use a little poster exercise and actually a little interaction with you. So again, I encourage you to see and find the Q&A button, and again, would be pleased to see questions as they come up. I'll say right now, my screen does not include any of those pieces. So actually, I'm going to see if I can find them there. I'll be able to see your chats as they come in. Excuse me, your Q&A input as they come in over the course of the next hour and a half or so. So we'll do that. We'll do the 4 steps to effective posters, and then we do a poster review and discussion. All right, so let's close that down, and I'm going to move that over here in the corner. Great, so what's next here? 4 effective posters, from panic, hopefully folks aren't too panicked about their posters, to perfect. 4 steps are: think strategy, to get message, hone your design, and practice your pitch. And we'll go through 2, we'll take a break, and then we'll go through the design and the pitch from there. What do we mean by strategy? Well, first of all, strategy is about an objective, knowing where you're headed. Second is about making sense of your environment and what a poster session environment is about. And the third thing is understanding your audience. All right, so let's talk about objectives. Most of the time when we're thinking about communications objectives, and even when we're thinking about our poster objectives, we're sort of like this goldfish here that has a, again, a general sense. I want the whole package, the little bowl, the colored pebbles, the plastic castle, the big sense or general sense of the kind of objective they have for their poster session or their communications activity. Unfortunately, those general objectives are not, and goals are not nearly as helpful as what some have called, and this comes from the Spitfire Strategies folks in Washington, D.C., these SMART objectives. SMART objectives are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and indeed they're time-bounded. Okay, so SMART are the first way of thinking about your objectives so that you can be, again, successful in your poster session. And what do we mean by a SMART objective? So a fuzzy objective helps to think about a fuzzy objective like the goldfish as making a successful presentation about my research at the AGS meeting next month. Okay, so if we want to be successful, we want it to go well, maybe we want a few people to talk with us, we want to enjoy ourselves. Again, those are, again, fuzzy and not particularly helpful in thinking strategically about your poster and indeed about any kind of communications activity. Perhaps a bit smarter objective is around something like, in preparation for participation in and follow up to the 2016 AGS meeting, to connect with 5 academics who provide constructive feedback and support my research agenda. Okay, so obviously the SMART objective is much more specific. It's measurable, right? You have 5 key academic leads that you want to connect with. It's attainable and realistic, and maybe in the course of a meeting, kind of getting to 5 folks is certainly a kind of a realistic notion, and it's time bounded, so it's around particularly the 2016 AGS meeting. Again, that's the first step in thinking about your strategy for a poster session, is to come up with a SMART objective. The second you want to think about is the environment, right? So, when you're doing a poster, when you're creating your poster, you're often in the quiet sort of your office in front of a screen, and then you get to the poster session, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm focused on the poster session. Things are not nearly as quiet as that single little rock on the top right-hand corner. It's not even as contemplative as the folks there, perhaps in your office where you're having a one-on-one conversation. A poster session is quite a disorienting and sort of competitive environment in which lots of things are happening, where the light is not particularly very good, perhaps, where people are walking by, sometimes with a cocktail in their hand, sometimes with a little hors d'oeuvre or something that they're eating, and they're talking to other people. It's in a big, loud room. And I think as we think about our posters, you want to think about the environment in which that poster and that poster session will take. And if we think that it's going to be something like that very quiet or contemplative environment, and we design and create a poster or a poster session experience in mind, we will likely miss the mark. What to do is to know your audience, and I'd love to show this picture of my son's Little League team. He's now actually a freshman at Wesleyan University, so he's become much bigger as every single other boy in this picture. But I like to tell the story of the Little Giants and my experience with them as a way of kind of explaining to folks why knowing your audience is so important, and how making sense of the audience can change the way you do your communications. So indeed, back when he was in first grade, I volunteered to be a Little League coach for his team, and in that great tradition of American dads, transmitting their hard-won knowledge of the great American game of baseball, I was going to be, this leader among these young men and influence them positive and helpful ways and all of that great stuff. And I showed up with my baseball cap and my clipboard and a plan for an hour-and-a-half practice. And of course, I was presented with this group of young boys, and not even young men, young boys, who for all their cuteness, really had two important characteristics that I had underestimated. One, they had an attention span, which, about the same as a swarm of gnats. The second thing was that they knew almost nothing about baseball. Now, I, had been, teaching Jacob, my son, about baseball in the backyard and throwing him pitches and things like that. But in fact, baseball is quite a complicated game, and even though I had tried to kind of break it down to the basics, I learned very quickly that they really knew almost nothing. And in fact, that was brought home to me in the first practice, where I put the whole team at home plate, and I figured, this is very basic. We're just going to run to first base, right? I figured that's a good place to start. And when I did that, four of the kids ran to first base, 4 ran to third base, and the other 4 in the middle, kind of looked at either side and tried to figure out, which group was right. So they really knew very little about the game. And so instead of the kind of practice, even though I kind of flubbed through, or I fumbled through the first practice or two, ultimately I very quickly figured out that I needed to make some changes to my communication style and to the practices. One is that I shortened the practices to 45 minutes, broke them up into 5-minute slots. Indeed, for each of those slots, we worked on something very basic, very simple to kind of get them started in baseball. In fact, one time I took the bat out of their hand and filled up a bucket of balls and painted the balls different colors. And we played a game where they stood in front of home plate without, just faking or putting to bat, and I would throw the ball to them, and the game would be to tell me the color of the ball, and they would say yellow or red or black or green, and that was a way of teaching them how to watch the bat hit the ball, or watch the ball as it was being pitched. So I had to make some very serious adjustments to make sense of my audience, and indeed that's some, I think, important lessons learned here, which is that one, and this is, again, while your audience at a scientific meeting will be obviously, hopefully somewhat more mature and knowledgeable, they are actually they will likely know a lot less than you suspect that they will know. That adapting a sort of a sense of the beginner's mind and to connecting with folks in ways, in the most basic ways, and to kind of educate them about topics is really is probably important. And the second thing is that you again have to make sense of the environment and the audience. So depending on what is they are most interested, that you're and able to kind of to understand that you're able to kind of communicate that more as directly and as clearly as possible. So that sense of strategy, we talk about our objective, we know our environment, and we're clear about our audience. People do ask me which one of these is my son, and he is the intellectual kid with his hand over his face in the front row with his tongue sticking out. And that's my beloved son, Jacob, and again, one of my great teachers in terms of communications. A couple of general thoughts on poster strategy. Again, your objective here is going to be about engagement, right? It's not about putting up a great poster. It's about sort of the set of conversations that you want to have, right? It's oftentimes a poorly lit, competitive environment where people are trolling back and forth, again, with their food and drink, and you're trying to capture their attention to get them to stop on your at your poster. It is obviously a scientific audience, but they are moving, and again, they're probably not at their most thoughtful or contemplative, and so you do need to kind of reach out and grab them, and not particularly grab them, please. I don't want to be. That should not be one of my recommendations. But you do want to figure out a way to kind of use your poster to kind of bring people into you and to make sure that they come and stop. You are in control of your message, again, so much as you're able to put whatever you want up on the poster, which is important. Some communications vehicles don't need to do that, and where you're building consensus around a particular message, but this is really yours, and again, you're also in control of what you're going to say in front of your poster as well. Finally, there's a sense that again, there's a visual format, and we'll talk a little bit about the format. And finally, I think one of the bigger comments or learnings that I try to impart is there's really not a mini paper. It's not sort of boiling down a journal article of 15 or 18 pages into a poster and just sort of telescoping down. It's really trying to create the backdrop for the kind of conversation that you're hoping to have. That's sort of the initial thoughts on poster strategy, the objective, the environment, and your sense of audience. You want to think about the second step to effective posters is around messaging. And again, we'll talk here about the importance of distillation, about adapting messages, and some of the challenges that some of us face in developing messages. So, the first thing that we want to think about messaging, and this is, I think, a really critical point around posters, and indeed all communications, is to think about how do we boil down, as this talk show host sort of asking, how do we boil down your book, your research, if you will, to a few words, to understand and to create in a very precise, powerful, compelling, and persuasive way the basics, the takeaway for your research. And again, this is not easy to do. It doesn't, it takes oftentimes a number of sort of iterations, but that's part of the process, right? And one of the tools that we've used in the past to help folks to think about the one thing message, right? And the one thing message completes the following 4 statements, right? The one your audience needs to know is, right? The reason this is important to this audience is, what this should do is, and urgent for this audience to act now. Now, in the context of a post, in a presentation, say you're doing some kind of publication or some brochure or a social media campaign, the call to action, the third bullet and the fourth bullet, why it's urgent, are really important. In the context of posters, you need to have very clearly in mind the one thing your audience needs to know and the reason this is important. If there is a call to action, for example, call me for more information, or please provide me with some input on my poster, either here or at or subsequently, that is actually that's a bonus. But for the most part, you'll certainly want to make sure that these first 2 bullets are covered in your message. And I think about sort of poster, you'll want to have that message as clear in your mind as it possibly can be. Again, once you have that sort of clear sense of that overarching, that basic message for your audience, you will have to think about sort of adapting the message to, sort of what your audience cares about. Now, your objective may be around getting input on your methodology, right, for the poster, or about a particular topic that your research is related to. And so, again, you'll want to adapt your message and your poster to sort of meet your audience's values and interests, right? You also want to meet their expectations. So, again, I'm going to give you some interesting and maybe some unconventional advice about poster design in just a second. But again, you want to make sure that the poster still looks sufficiently scientific, that there is a sufficient and expected sort of amount of data on the poster, and you don't want to transgress kinds of expectations too radically and alienate your viewer. And finally, you'll want to try to make sense of perhaps multiple audiences that may be coming to your poster during the course of the poster session. And we'll provide some strategies about how to manage that. A lot of that is to identify the primary audience you have based on your objective, and understand that there may be other audiences that say you are interested, say your audience may not be that interested in the methodology, but there may be a few methodologists in there that you'd like to kind of engage. And so instead of including methodology and cluttering your poster, you might pull that off and that into a handout. Or if there is sort of data analysis that is important to your research, but perhaps not critically important to your priority audience, you can pull that into handouts as well. And that way you'll be able to adapt your poster and indeed your pitch during front of your poster to the needs of different audiences. And then, of course, there are some challenges that come around, around messaging. For the most part, there are these tonal issues, and I'll get to that in just a second in this poster here. So, sometimes people take too big a chance here and and it sends a powerful message, but it can be the wrong message. Maybe for some audiences, this Viking outfit is something that would really be engaging. But indeed, there are the challenges that most of the time I think trip up us as scientific communicators and as poster presenters is the sort of the complexity of the message, the sort of the jargon that we use, and that again, sometimes in scientific meetings you are talking to folks who have a wide variety, even though they may all be doctors, nurses, or social workers, or have healthcare sort of preparation. They may not understand the acronyms and the specific terminology that you're using is perfectly important or helpful in describing very particularly the scientific details of your work. But again, that jargon, that complexity, and indeed sort of the opacity or abstraction of the language can provide a barrier to engaging folks that you're trying to engage in a poster session. And so trying to find good concrete language and that is straightforward and generally understandable is important. There's also I think in terms of the messaging challenge, sort of a lack of emotion oftentimes, where we sort of that scientists and healthcare folks are people too, and that there's an opportunity in our posters to some extent, not to a huge extent, but there's certainly a way of sort of infusing a sense of emotion in the poster, at least in your pitch, that will actually engage people and give them a sense of why they should care. And then finally, your message may be off key. It may miss the mark, perhaps like this outfit here. But again, in my experience, the first four bullets here around message challenges are much more common and much more things that we as communicators, scientific communicators, need to pay more attention to than this problem being off key. So this is again the first two steps, and I'm going to take a breath here and give you all a chance to sort of jump in. I've talked about strategy and I've talked about message, and what I was hoping that folks could do is to think about your next poster session, and to type into the Q&A bullet there an objective, that a SMART objective for that poster session. So if you could do that, that would be very helpful. A couple of them, why not? I don't see anything coming through. So we have Maria Schwartz. Our objective is to evaluate how sleep parameters affect the following day's physical activity. So maybe you can think about sort of a SMART objective. So in the context of the poster session, who do you want to engage around that topic? Disparities in pain. There's another one to describe disparities in pain management around racial minorities in nursing home residents. Thank you, Catherine. Again, these are sort of topics or the message perhaps, but in terms of your objective for your session, what would success look like by the time you're done with the poster session? If you would engage to end on what topic? Brooks has, okay, to meet two potential collaborators in my area of research, aging and function. Very good. That's very helpful. So it gets, and you might want to talk about the kinds of collaborators. So the kinds of collaborators that you're particularly hoping for. Maybe they're senior, maybe they're junior. Maria Schwartz came back, obtained feedback from three researchers. and maybe you can be a little bit more specific about the kind of feedback that you're looking for. Alex has just talked about sort of potential collaborators, collaborators in my region of North Carolina, senior collaborators in my region of North Carolina. So again, you're getting more and more specific, more measurable, again, smarter objectives. See if there's any, maybe there's one more that comes in. To communicate effectively the content of my research to at least 4 interested parties. So again, that's you're there, that's the engagement, and then the question is, what would you like those 4 interested parties to do, or what kind of what feedback particularly are you looking for? Of the type of what we mean by sort of an objective here for the poster session, and again, as you get clarity around that. Around that objective, that can have an important influence on the type of poster that you're going to do, and the kind of content that you're going to include in that on that poster. All right. Before we go on. All right. So why don't we go to step number 3. Again, we've talked about strategy, we've talked about message. The third step is around the design of a scientific poster, and we'll talk about the basics, the important how message drives the design. And again, this is one of the reasons why we spent a little time on the design, on messaging before, and all the importance of getting help. Is around the building, some building blocks about graphic design. Obviously, first of all, the first main lesson, and again, even as I go through most scientific poster sessions these days, I would say that 90 to 95% of the posters that I see have too much text on them, and indeed there could be these could be honed down a great deal to get a much more visually appealing and much more visually engaging kind of poster. The second thing, and this is related to the first, is the importance of thinking big right around the font. So you want to make sure that the font sizes are big enough that the headlines on the very top are 100, 115 or thereabouts point fonts, excuse me. That the major lines are below that are sort of in the 90 point size, and that ultimately that nothing gets down in terms of the basic text, that gets down below 24 point. Again, because this is important, that we are in a competitive environment, right? People are moving, and in order for people to read while they're moving, that sense, that the size of the text really is really critical. Around, besides the size of the font and the amount of text, is really contrast. Oftentimes we see posters that have these beautiful sort of backgrounds and have patterns on them, or that they go from dark to light. And again, it's beautiful. They look beautiful, but unfortunately, what happens is that the contrast on the posters can be very difficult to manage, and that some of the poster is very readable, and then other parts of the poster really are not. And again, kind of Murphy's law of poster presentation is that your poster will end up in the worst lighted, part of the poster session. So, you really want to make sure that the background is either, very light or very dark, and that there is, contrast, either black or very dark blue fonts, a white background, or dropout white, or perhaps yellow, very light yellow on the on darker backgrounds. And then finally, the fourth sort of basic really is that you can pull, there's always the opportunity to pull things out of the poster so that there is more room, indeed less text. And I oftentimes find, again, the methodology section, some of the secondary analysis, some of the background sometimes is it take up a lot of room on a poster, and it's not clear, whether that information would be better on the poster or perhaps pulled into a handout, so that the most important part of the poster can be can take center stage, and to ensure that the right type of people, the people you're trying to reach, see that your kind of core message and the most important information. So that's the first sort of set of the basics. The second thing is to think about, in terms of basic graphic design, and again, if you have folks at your university that can help you with the design, they can explain to you a little bit more about the sort of the importance of a grid. Most of us have a pretty good sense of the columns and making sure that the columns are you know, pretty much the same size or you know, evenly distributed across the page. Also, there's a grid from the bottom to the top of the page, and this kind of grid that, of course, you would not include this lines on the page itself, but again, designing with this grid in mind enables you then to place information in ways that create a much more pleasing and much more organized feeling about the poster, and again, are important sort of basic and important graphic design principles that will sort of undergird, if you will, the way you present the information. Second piece, sort of the basis of graphic design, is really the importance of message in the graphic design. And again, one of the reasons why it's important to figure that message out in the first place is that you find, you know, the poster is a full format, obviously, and so you want to figure out, again, what your message is, and then find out what the graphic manifestation of that message might be. It may be a table, it may be a graph, photo, colored text box, whatever, but you really do want to figure out where the kind of core message is expressed visually, and then you want to make that as big as possible. You want to place that in a prominent place on your poster, and you want to again then design the rest of the poster around that main visual element, if you will. All right. So again, that's the second piece, is to figure out the message and design around it. And the third thing is really to get design support. You know, the posters are actually a very complicated, complex sort of scientific posters are a very complex design challenge. And I took a year of graphic design when I was an undergraduate, and they had us design a poster at the end of the semester, which was 18 inches by 24 inches, which is much smaller, obviously, than a scientific poster. And had, like, you know, 8 words on it. You know, it was a very basic kind of poster. It was a, you know, like almost like a movie poster. And you know, scientific posters are much more complex. There's much more information. They're much bigger. And you know, we suggest that, in fact, that you find templates or models. And again, if you go to posterbuzz.com, there are a set of free templates and models that you can use to help you sort of find a sort of a graphic look and feel that you can easily, that you don't have to invent from scratch. The other thing you should certainly do, and I know a lot of universities will do this around the content, is to provide sort of peer review or mentor review of your posters to kind of get input. And in fact, we'll do a little bit of that in just a second. But that's, you know, getting input from other people will help you kind of identify sort of the challenges you might have in your poster design, and indeed around the content of the poster. And then finally, you know, there are professionals and graphics departments around that, and again, I would encourage you to be as organized as possible so that you can use their resources and their design support as best you can, because again, this complex design challenge and having people who know something about the graphic design can really be really helpful and important. I'm going to take a breath here. I'm wondering if there's any. I'm trying to go back here. Are there any questions before I go? All right. We're going to have a little more. I'm going to kind of move to the next sort of interactive sort of part of the webinar. And I'll tell a story, which is how we sort of came to work on these posters and kind of develop this sort of approach to poster sessions. Back about 10 years, actually, and I'm pleased that Tom Gill is an aging committee aging initiative steering committee member So our work kind of started with Tom many years ago at a Whitson meeting, John Harper Foundation Whitson meeting, where I was kind of complaining about sort of posters, and I couldn't really understand sort of why traditional posters were kind of done the way they've been done. And they sort of didn't feel they were kind of useful from a communications point of view. I mean, I understood that I've been going to poster sessions for about 10 years at the time myself, and I understood that as a layperson that I wouldn't understand all of the technical pieces of the poster, but I didn't understand why they were organized the way they were, and given the environment in which posters were taking place, why people put information they did. And so I guess I was having breakfast with Tom, and maybe to help him, or maybe because he wanted me to kind of be quiet and let him finish his eggs or whatever, he agreed to work with me on his next poster, and actually in front of an AGS meeting. And so he developed this poster for AGS, and we agreed to work on it subsequently. And he sent me this poster. It was back in the day when people still did the posters on white 8.5 by 11 inch or smaller paper with some light blue background, as you can see here. But it's set up actually in much the same way that posters are generally set up now, where the background is on the left and the objectives, and it kind of follows it kind of snakes from the top left down to the bottom left to the down that middle column and up to the top and then back down with the summary and the implications, the good stuff, the messages, if you will, in the bottom right. So I said, this is my poster. What would you do? And we had a little conversation about what the poster is about. And we took it to our graphic designers, and we came up with this poster instead. Trying to get that. There we go. So we started here, and sort of here. So in chat, or I'm sorry, not chat, to use the Q&A to kind of tell me a little bit about what is different between the original poster and what in this poster here. Yes, indeed. The first title is a very prosaic title, very much like a journal. Indeed, we kind of a little harder on the title, when bad things happen to older people, so that we might age them as they as people as they go by. And in fact, I would say the title is the main sort of design element that we paid attention to, that's sometimes ignored in terms of getting people to stop and to pay attention to your message. Let's see. Oops, sorry. We have a bunch of comments coming in here, so let's encourage more conversation about the results. Yes, the results are much bigger, right? And so when Tom was telling me the story of this this poster, it was very clear that the main stories were in two of those. In two of those in the graph on the top and the chart on that table 3. And again, we made sure that those tables were bigger, and again were mostly a critical part of design. So about here. Let's see, anything else? Let's see. Oh, the question. Much more appealing and take-home message is obvious. Yes. So the take-home messages are on the top. The key message is right in front of the person walking by. I like what we learned is on the top, and the visuals and the bolding. So all these are sort of design sort of elements, right? In particular, the most radical thing we did here was to put the message on the very top of the poster, what we learned, and we took that out of the discussion and we made that sort of front and center. And we bolded, that these intervening events may be suitable targets for the prevention of disability, and that the initial message that illness and injuries leading to either hospitalization or restricted activity were an important sources of disability for community living older adults, regardless of the presence of physical frailty. And that provides a very clear sense from a distance that that people can see and then can engage. the use of, and then finally, I guess the last comment here is the use of color and use of the boldness and the bullets in the methods section is helpful. So, I guess Amber Brooks writes that there's less text again, and there's the use of bullets in the methods section. Again, that use of bulleting and again the ability to people to information in that bulleted way again is useful to get people to stop and again to at a glance understand that information. And if the picture is engaging, so again that's another. The picture is I think it's oftentimes a judgment call. It does kind of very quickly give people a sense of sort of what the poster is about, and again can create sort of an emotional connection potentially. But again, that's an option as you think about your poster and making it something that will cause people to stop. I think we want to be careful, particularly in a scientific setting, to not pictures over the place. And in fact, I think we drafted this with 5 or 6 photos, and again we figured through the process we really came to understand that one good picture, one meaningful picture is probably better than having more than one there. So that's kind of an example, if you will, sort of before and after about how to think about a poster and to kind of apply, if you will, the information that we were talking about. Again, most posters, and we'll see a couple posters in just a second, follow that more traditional approach. This is a different way of using and applying communications and design principles in a way that we think can be helpful and will improve posters as well. There's a couple other points here before we go on to the next. There's a simplified grid structure. Yes, it is. It is again much simpler to kind of find information based on the grid. Thank you. And then what sort of handout accompanied this poster? Deborah, this is Deborah Lynn Grant. I'm not exactly sure. I think it was indeed. Let's go back actually. Here we go. I think it was. There was something about the data collection and the disability outcomes that we created, so that there was a way to make sure that information was covered, but again didn't clutter up the rest of the the poster. Oh, and Rebecca asks, can you repeat the website? Well, I'll repeat it now, and I'll repeat it at the end. It is posterbuzz.com. Again, I encourage you to use the poster templates. There's also a website, bandwidthonline.org, which is created by the John A. Hartford Foundation. And again, on bandwidthonline.org, there are templates and examples that folks can use as well. They're posterbuzz.com, and then maybe you can do bandwidthonline.org. So it'll be up in the Q&A. All right, so we talked about strategy, we talked about messages, we've gone through the design, and now we just want to talk about the pitch, right? What you're actually going to say in front of your poster. This is, I think, a really under-attended to part of any poster session, in part because what happens is that you spend all your time trying to figure out what's going to go up in the graphic design. You've got to get it printed. You're unrolling it. You're making sure it's even, it goes up, etc. And many times people don't practice what is it they're going to say. And I think that is a critical sort of part of any kind of post presentation, any kind of communications activity, obviously, is to have that 20-second or 30-second elevator speech, if you will, ready to go, and to not just be kind of fluent and sort of clear, but perhaps creating an elevator speech or an introduction to your poster that might pique the interest of a person who is walking by, that might connect with the audience and the audience that you're particularly trying to connect with in some kind of meaningful way around your topic. Perhaps making your rationale or connecting the research, to kind of personal interest or story that is important to you and to this work, as a way, again, of connecting with your audience and to creating sort of an emotional sort of engagement that might not be possible otherwise. I think that all of those things and having that and thinking about that elevator speech and thinking about that introduction is really critical. From a practical point of view, it's really important to have the short version in line because, again, you're trying to connect with a particular group of people, right? And so, you don't be spending, 5 minutes, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes kind of going through your production while the person that you're hoping to kind of connect with kind of walks past and see that you're engaged. And you want to kind of have the short version so that the people perhaps who are not part of your can kind of make a decision to either stay or perhaps go. And you want to again give them a chance to kind of ask you questions so that you can then focus on the parts of the poster that are of most interest to the person that you're trying to engage. And indeed, in terms of trying to connect with your audience and the folks that you are, that you've identified through your objective, one of the things that I like to suggest is for folks to think about who the people might be, and not just to kind of, you might actually have 5 names of people who give you feedback about your poster, about your research, or look at 1 or 2 senior leaders who are trying to connect with about a particular topic, and to write them an email before the session occurs, and to encourage them to come over and stop at your poster and to engage with you about a particular your research and about the poster. So again, this is about this is not just simply about having a good poster session and getting your research up on the poster in an effective way. It's really about engaging a group of people into a particular objective that matters to you. Okay, being strategic, getting your message, getting the design right is important, but also, remembering that to connect and to have your pitch ready is really important as well. So gives that kind of talks us through the 4 steps. We have a couple posters that folks have volunteered for the group to review, and I'm going to show those in just a second. But I'm going to take another breath and see if folks have any other questions that you need that you'd like answered before we kind of review a couple posters, that people have developed or have drafted for our purposes here today. Great. I'm hearing that Benny Nimble is on the webinar, but we'll actually go through. We'll go through a couple posters here, and if folks don't have questions, if you have questions, again, please feel free to jump in. But again, I'm gonna folks take a look at a couple of these posters and give us your feedback and help us sort of work on this post and kind of find out maybe and understand our own poster practice, sort of what we like or what we might want to improve. Excuse me, I went to the second poster inadvertent there. So if folks could take a look at this poster and give us a sense of sort of what normally have. Unfortunately, Mayra's not on the call today, and so we can hear from her about sort of what her main message is. But if you take a minute just to kind of read through this, just to tell us sort of what. Mayra is on. I just got a message that Mayra is on. Mayra, are you on? Maybe we can unmute your phone and you might give us the 3rd poster and what you're trying to achieve here.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great! Thank you for joining us. Thank you for volunteering this poster. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're trying to achieve with this poster.
Yeah, I can do my best. I mean,
of course.
Yeah. So basically, this poster, we have around 2,000 parents that we recruited in different, in Massachusetts and in Georgia we were looking into basically multiple chronic conditions in patients that just have acute coronary syndrome. So what we did was just, get some information from these patients, and we described in the first table, on the top, the characteristics of the patient, and they are divided in groups, patients that have 0 to morbidity, 2 to 3, and then patients that have more than 4 morbidities, and describe the basic characteristics, and then we look into other characteristics that are not that traditionally looked into patients with chronic conditions, and that has to do with depression and anxiety, and some psychosocial factors that we thought were kind of unique in this cohort of patients, and we went to see if the patients were sick, but also if have other prerequisites that are really interesting to look in the time that you want to treat these patients and improve the quality of life of these patients. So we looked into statistics and found that patients that are sicker, they also have other psychosocial stressors, and these points are very important also to address if you want to improve the quality of life of them. So.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I would think about is, again, working on that, working on the pitch description as you get ready for your next poster session. And that will be helpful in terms of getting people to focus. You did a very good job at sort of explaining the process to which, towards your conclusions. And I think there might be a way of actually flipping that so that you can tell us what learnings are at the very beginning, right? That's certainly one thing to think about.
Okay.
As you go forward, as we've kind of gone through the poster session, is there anything that you might change on this poster after hearing the webinar?
I like the idea what you presented before about having maybe a bigger, pick something, maybe looking into the conclusions of the posters, like maybe highlighting the psychosocial stressors, because that's kind of unique in my study. So I will move the conclusions to the top, or highlighting a different color to just, tell the audience that, something that is very different from this post of the study that we look into patient characteristics from a social point of view, and right. That's different. So maybe that's something we're going to highlight now.
Great. Actually, maybe folks can type in maybe any kind of suggestions or things that they like about the poster, and things that where Mayra might might think about different approaches to the.
Yeah.
Right. Folks can see. So this great. I have a number of comments here.
Yeah.
So the first thing is sort of any way to add a color, make it more interesting. So this is it's fairly monochromatic. There's 2 colors here. I know that's probably the UMass Medical School's colors, but again, using color to draw attention to your conclusions and to the most important find, I think would be interesting, helpful.
Okay.
The section there's a comment here that the section titles stand out well. Indeed, background, objectives, methods, I think are helpful.
Okay.
Let's see. There are some recommendations about trying to lighten the amount of lighten up the amount of text here, because it does take a lot of there is a lot of white space around the most important things. I think that's a really good, really helpful. And then there's another one here about making the graph. I was going to actually get to this in just a second. You consider making the graph or other figures tell the story bigger. Because in fact, I wonder whether whether the socio-demographic and clinical characteristics of the hospitalized is really that critical to the poster. If that's the most important part of the poster. In fact, by having it up there in the center, in the middle, you kind of have a sense that this is that's that we should pay attention to first, and I think that's probably not what you want to take care of first.
That's true, yeah.
Right. Which figure or table is the most important one from your perspective?
I think that is after the table that describes the psychosocial characteristics. The one is, that one.
That one there.
So that's kind of unique in my study, that I look into different characteristics, not just only the chronic conditions. Yeah.
Right. And these are all significant. All the significant findings here.
Yes.
Great. And are there one? I mean, the other thing to think about, and this may not be important for you, but for others, they might think about sort of, well, which of these characteristics would you really want to draw the most attention to?
Okay. I mean, I should think maybe some highlight or just show, in a different for something the one more important. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could circle them. You could, again, it's a little hard to tell which one. It's a fairly long list. They may all be important. But, I would argue that you'd want to really try to figure out, one or two or three that that are most important to telling your story.
Okay.
And the last thing would be to think about a catchier headline. Again, this is a very good, this is a fine title. It's a fine sort of journal title, but if you could say something more declarative about a poster message, that could be carried in that title as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Meredith, thank you for volunteering this poster, and we appreciate you telling us a little bit about your research, and good luck. Is your next poster at AG? Is it going to be at AGS, or where are you going to be? Great.
Thank you very much for the feedback.
Thank you. All right, go to our second poster, and let's see. Try to get. Let's see if we can get the slide to go forward here. There we go. Is Zane Nimble on the phone?
Yes.
You can. Oh, you are. Thank you. Perhaps, Benny, you can tell us a little bit about your poster. Does patient-provider race, ethnicity, and language concordance affect patient experience of care?
Yes. So we were looking at the effect of race, ethnicity, and language concordance on patient experience of care. In particular, two measures of experience of care, communication and overall assessment of provider. And we looked at 6 different racial ethnic groups and by language proficiency status. So that included Asian Indians, Chinese with limited English proficiency and English proficient Chinese, Latinos with limited English proficiency and English proficient Latinos, as well as non-Hispanic whites. First, we looked to see if there were differences in how these different groups rate on these care experience measures, and that's kind of shown in the part 1 of our analysis. So that Latinos with LEP are more likely to rate favorably on overall assessment and less likely on communication, and we see that Asian, Indians, Chinese, and regarding English proficiency rate less favorably. And then in the second part, we wanted to see if REL concordance mitigates some of these disparities in patient experience of care. And so we have we have done analysis within each of these different RE ethnicity groups. Kind of shown in part 2 of our analysis. And so for Asian Indians, we see that concordance with patient-provider race ethnic concordance improves their communication scores. For Chinese, we didn't see any differences, regardless of their limited English proficiency status. For Latinos, for Latinos with limited English proficiency, we see that they're less likely to be satisfied if they were in overall assessment if they saw a non-Latino provider who spoke Spanish only, or a Latino provider spoke English only. And for listeners who are English proficient, we see that they were more likely to be satisfied with overall assessment if they are a Latino provider than non-Latino providers.
Who do you want to engage at the next poster session?
We are going to be presenting at the Healthcare Systems Services Network.
Okay. And what would you like from a group of people there, or those people?
So we're basically just trying to. I guess we'll have some implications on how healthcare systems can improve healthcare quality, and possibly by looking at concordance and experience of care.
Okay, great. So are you trying to engage health system leaders who might be at the meeting, or clinicians?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. So you'll want to think about. I mean, I think one of the things I think about is sort of to think about in terms of your messaging, to try to really focus on the people that you're trying to convince or educate or persuade, right? And make sure that the content of the poster really responds to their needs. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to say about your poster before we open it up to other folks to see what they might do differently, or what?
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that that what I'm presenting is clear, especially with some of the plots and the forest plots that are presented. Make sure that, because we are doing a lot of comparisons, and I want to make sure that that comes across and that it's clear. And also, there's just a lot of text in the post right now, so just that people are able to get the main message from there without being overwhelmed by it. Okay,
great. Are people to respond to Bonnie and her interest here? We have actually one comment already about moving some of this stuff to a handout that will free up, like for example, the references. Certainly take out. And maybe there's something about the methodology too that might be telescoped down to give you some more room, because right now, again, I think part of one challenge certainly is the amount of information that's there, and then to kind of get it's hard among all of that information how to find what the main message is really about. I think is still a challenge.
Okay.
And this is actually something that people like the bold on the top. I'm sorry, the graph, the bar chart, excuse me, at the top. Let me see if I can see this. I think over here. And they did suggest that using thicker lines here would be very helpful to kind of create more, make these bigger and to make the lines thicker so that we can understand we can see those differences a little bit more clearly.
Okay.
All right. Let's hear that the conclusions might be highlighted more. Again, these are now sort of buried at some level, sort of in between the end of your results and the limitations and the references. And again, you want to figure out a way to get that more front and center.
Okay.
Any group? One of the ways is to look at the title. When you ask a question like that, the answer is your message, right? Mm-hmm. So when asking a question, I would suggest perhaps have a title that answers the question and gives you sort of a declarative statement, that something along the lines of something that's in the conclusions here that would give people a much clearer sense of what the poster is about, what the main message is.
Okay.
So I think the other piece is to think a little bit about I don't know how familiar folks will be with the acronyms that you're using, the REL and the LEP, and even the term concordance, which I kind of understand what it means, but again, those seem to be terms of art. I wonder if those were, if there are others, other things that you could, ways of translating some of those terms and some of those acronyms, so that folks who are walking by might get those concepts more quickly. And then what was said earlier, I think the main thing is really to figure out where your story is in these graphs. Which one are all of these graphs or tables important, or which one would you draw my attention to if I was coming by your poster?
Probably the graphs for part 2.
Part 2 here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would make sure that, again, even though I would think about sort of, having this figuring out a way to have this information here right at the top of the poster, or at least maybe either top middle or top right, which are the kind of the main places to for people to see information, particularly as they're walking by, and then to make other tables and charts smaller, and so they don't perhaps compete as directly with those with the main table there. Excuse me, graph there.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Did I miss any other? I think I've got use of color. Again, this is relatively sort of monochromatic. So there's basically two colors, except for what's in the chart, and that's why this, size, boldness, all those things are, useful to draw attention to your message and the most important part of the poster. So try to think about using color and boldness and size to again, once you're clear about what the priority is and what your key message is, to draw attention to that information.
All right.
Very much for offering the poster, and again, thanks to the group for weighing in, and again, I think playing with some of the ideas that we presented here. So let's again, I'm still trying to remove the posters. I want to show a couple more posters before we close, or there may be a few questions that I may have missed, and I'll folks can remind me about those. But I did want to show a couple of posters here around, posters that folks might emulate, and that you might some ideas here in terms of design. Again, I like here I'm trying to annotate this here. I like the use of the charts here. They're very simple, and again, from a distance, you can see the differences between the two lines. The type here is quite is declarative and is actually the message that Dr. Prevost wanted to communicate. And again, the conclusions are here at the bottom, but again, that's fine. I think there's still plenty of, they're bulleted and easy to read, and again, I think that's quite a poster here as well. And again, you have even a photograph that gives you a sense of topic around nursing homes. You know what? I have to get rid of the annotation in order to move the poster. Other one, again, again, not a great title, but again, I think the use of what we learned here, and again, use of a much bigger bar chart to draw attention to the kind of key findings. Message poster that again has what we learned at the top of the poster, as well as both the major themes in terms of the quantitative results, as well as the quantitative kind of key quantitative results. And again, there were plenty of other charts that were associated with this poster, but indeed we were able to hone it down to this one. Again, there were other handouts that had additional charts, additional reflections on the major themes as well. This is an example of again a more sort of conceptual poster that for someone who is just sort of beginning and it's a theoretical poster that has this schema here that is the focus poster that can be helpful. Here we have another schematically focused poster, but for one, actually a poster where there are only preliminary findings, and again, there's something more at the beginning of a research process, a more junior person in this offering this poster. Even some here who is just even starting their dissertation and doing a poster here that is using a sort of an unusual kind of design to sort of background, the aim, the methods, and then the theoretical framework around which dissertation is done. Again, a much more sort of high concept design. Again, a way to kind of tell the story of this research around geriatric neutrophils. Goes from the elements of current practice, the critique of that practice, based on the research, and then implications, research and practice. And again, that works quite nicely across the screen. And a sense of sort of the types of the many different ways that you can together a poster and design a poster to get your message and to help you achieve your objectives. Again, as you think about going poster, if you will, you want to remember 4 steps. So all thinking strategy, the objective, the environment, the audience. You want a message. You want to remember the one thing you want the audience to remember. And when you have that message, you want to take a breath and think about your design. You want to find that visual manifestation of the message and design around that. And then ultimately, you want to create a pitch that very clearly and very succinctly, persuasively, engagingly describes that main message in ways that will connect with the audience and help you achieve your. I do want to mention sort of Poster Buzz, and again, it's posterbuzz.com. It's a free resource and has a variety of templates and other resources, and it goes through some of the content that we went through today. Again, I want to encourage people to think about finding help. You can really write to me, and I'd be happy to kind of take a look at posters and provide input. There's beonline.org, which I mentioned earlier. Please do go reach out to graphic designers, a graphic design class, other publications or graphic design offices in your area for help around the design. But the work that you can do is to think strategically about your poster, to understand that objective, the audience, and the message, and design a poster that really meets their needs. So that gives you, that's sort of my presentation for this afternoon. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, we can end just a couple minutes early. But again, if there are questions that I've missed that Catherine can remind me of, that would be great.
I haven't seen any questions that you've missed, so if anyone has more questions to ask, please say. Great.
Oh, there's one question about that folks are sometimes stuck with the title of their poster and the abstract of the poster. So that is something. Again, once you submitted the abstract, it is hard to change. That said, the only thing that would make it difficult, if you did, there's no rule against changing unless you're competing, say, for an award or something like that. The only challenge would be that if people are actually gone through the abstract book and have seen the title, they might recognize your poster or connect your poster to the poster with the new title. So again, there is a lot of flexibility in terms of the types of titles, and I would encourage folks to think about those before they submit their abstract and as they're putting together the poster. The end of our questions. Any, Catherine, anything else there may be some business that you want to take care of?
Me, I think Heather Whitson might just say a few more words. Just thanking everyone for coming on the webinar. The only thing I would add is if anyone has questions for John or for the Aging Initiative, they can feel free to email me. I think most of you have my email now just through the advertisements, and I can get your questions to John if need be.
I will say I did see one question popping up that relates to the size of posters, and I know, John, that you've stressed that is one important thing to check, make sure that you check what size is going to be allotted for your poster, and if there are specifics given by the conference that's hosting your poster, make sure that the size fits within it. And this person is saying, can I design a poster for 4 feet by 8 feet? Just, I guess, acknowledging the fact that it's sort of a drag to show up with a poster that's either much too large or much too small for the space allotted. So
yes.
Checking that.
The thing I would say about the 4 by 8, I think 4 by 8 is too big. I don't think you need to fill an entire 4 by 8. I mean, that if you have like a 2 feet by 2 feet poster, it's going to look like a postage stamp, right? So what I would suggest is something. I like the sizes, sort of feet by 4 feet, or maybe a little bit bigger, or something that is maybe 6 or maybe 5 or 6 feet wide and 3 feet high. I wouldn't go all the way to the 4 by 8. I think those are huge, and they're difficult to manage in terms of printing them. They're expensive, and I think you don't want something too small. But finding something that will fit comfortably in that space without actually breaking the bank or causing you any kind of design challenges is important.
All right. With that, I want to thank all of our participants for logging for their lunch hour, and I especially want to thank John for volunteering your time to share your expertise on this with us. It's very appreciated, and I'm sure that we'll be revisiting the slides and the websites a lot with conf season upon us.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, and goodbye.